to, it's like Mark Twain, he said, my demise has been greatly exaggerated. Our demise, the industry, has been greatly exaggerated. We're going to be around 40 years, and we have to change the narrative somewhat. It's got to be IQ instead of EQ, the emotional quotient that's run all the greenies over the cliff, and they've tried to run all of us over the cliff. We hadn't gone over the cliff, Ron. And we're not going to.
You know what? We've got you here. We got to talk a little politics, Harold. So let's start with the news this week. Colonial Pipeline. That is a critical piece of American infrastructure for millions and millions of people in the Northeast, bringing American oil up and gasoline and diesel. So tell us what you're thinking about.
I think it's a terrorist attack, and this administration looking at it, well, that's just private companies, nothing to get excited about. That's crazy. It needs to be escalated from the FBI to Department of Defense. These are foreign terrorists that's doing this, that want to take down America. And what would happen to the electric grid? These are private companies. What if it happened to them? We're talking a lot of people's deaths. And it all goes back to the consumer. Running up consumer prices, lining up at the pump, can't get gasoline. I mean, it's very disruptive. Our company, we have a bulwark of defense, from cyber terrorism, but these guys, thousands of hits a day, midstream companies that we deal with, they're fending off those hits every day just like we are. So it's terrorism. We have to treat it that way and get very serious about in this country.
There's a video going around that I showed Mike Summers this morning of a young woman at a gas pump putting gasoline into a plastic grocery bag, and then she goes and gets another plastic grocery bag, and then gas is spilling all over, and then she puts it in the back of her little hatchback. And so environmentalism, when we need energy, goes out the door pretty fast when we get over the crazy. When people want energy, they need it badly. So, we're looking at the messages out of the Biden administration. I know you and President Trump became really good friends, and the contrast in the last 120 days is just, where is all this headed, Harold?
It's the comparison between Trump and Biden. Let's just look at that a minute. I mean, Trump is all about supply, and the governor mentioned pro-growth and all those things during that 4-year term. And, of course, Biden's all about scarcity, Here we are, and it's a parallel. I know all these young people don't know about Carter. Remember that? And guess what? Dried up supply. When you do that, what happens to commodity prices? Go up. What's happened to the commodity price since Biden got in? It's up 50%, both oil and gas. So that's what happens. You drive supply. Of course, that doesn't all work bad for us. It's those boys doing it, right? But here he is, friends of Jimmy Carter.
So, Colonial Pipeline, and then, of course, I know DAPL is of great interest to everybody, and our next speaker is Kelcy Warren, but how important is DAPL?
He's a great guy, by the way.
How important is DAPL and just as a piece of American energy infrastructure and too continental?
It's very important. It's crazy that this judge would ever come down with that type of ruling on that, but it's not going to shut down. I think this administration is finding out certainly how critical supply is to America, to national security. And energy security is everything. National security, economic security, it means everything to this nation and that we hold so dear. So DAPL is a great thing. Got to keep it going, and will. And so you'll hear more about that from Kelcy, but absolutely critical. That's a critical pipeline.
Harold, a year ago I remember the day, as I'm sure you do remember the day, April 20th, 2020, price of oil was going like this, and minus 37. we all sat around and kicked the tires and complained. And what did Harold Hamm do when that happened?
Well, we had to restore another market, and we've gone about that. We said there was three things you had to do. First of all, get the brand out there, and so American Gulf Coast Select was it. A lot of our oil goes to the Gulf Coast. A lot of oil produced in America never sees Cushing, Oklahoma, small landlocked refined complex, storage complex, basically. And so a lot of it goes directly to the Gulf Coast. We have to have a waterborne market here in America. So American Gulf Coast Select does that, and we're just about there to create a new market. The guys in Chicago and Cushing, they've messed up pretty badly, and that's going to have to go, it'll be a localized market, but it'll be replaced.
Well, Harold, I think that's why you fit in so well in North Dakota. You're a doer. You don't just sit around and complain. You act. And speaking of that, is it 6, 7 years ago now, you knew that we needed to sell American oil across the world. Tell everybody about what you did in order to get Congress to lift the oil export ban.
Well, we had some heavy lifting, and I'd like to work Blue Halsey to death, but setting up all the meetings and everything, Washington, D.C., but we had to convince, a adverse administration, basically, that we had to have exports and get it through. So we got some backing for it, but to get Obama to do it, we had to put it on a spending bill, the omnibus bill. And that's more than they like is spending. So we got it done by attaching it to that and made it happen. But we couldn't have energy independence without it. We couldn't do what we're doing up here without it. At that time, the differential was way out of whack. It'd been as high as $27 a barrel, a difference in what we were getting, what the market was. And so by doing that, that evaporated overnight. That differential was gone. And so was able to get it done in 2015, December 18th. I still remember the minute the bill was signed.
Well, you had a big group of people behind you, but what was the number? How many trips to Washington did you guys make?
Oh, Blue count them. We met with over 100.
100
had
trips.
over 100 meetings and something like 50 trips. So it was a whole lot.
Wow, great effort. Yeah. So. You have, a year ago, after the price collapse, we did a Zoom call or whatever we called it back then, and you labeled this the triple whammy. You want to talk about the triple whammy, and then we'll talk a little bit about how you reacted to the triple whammy of COVID and oil collapse?
Well, it was everything. It was demand, was part of that. COVID, and certainly, OPEC was the first part of that triple whammy. They and the Russians got crazy, got crossways, and did what they did. And then COVID, then of course the market, manipulation that went on. So really wound up with a triple whammy on this industry, and we had to rebound from it. And the only way it happened was with a lot of ingenuity. And it's good to be back where we're at today. And you've done a great job up here, Ron, with what you've done, with Petroleum Council, all the associations across America, pulling everybody together, all the innovation that's happened. We're seeing great things done. At $55 oil, we could make money today. $55 oil in 2019, we weren't. So we've got a whole different level of efficiency today in this industry than we had then.
Harold, You know, it's been a tough year for everybody in this room, everybody in the industry, everybody across this country. And I know when I'm with you, you love talking to students more than talking to anybody. You just shine when you talk to students. So
That's the future.
well, it is. And, you know, we get a lot of, we're encouraging people to go in the energy industry. And what's your message to everybody here about getting through downturns? You've been through a few downturns.
Yeah.
How many dry holes did you drill before you found oil again? I can't remember the number, but.
Yeah, we kind of had a dry hole streak about 17 one time.
So what's your message to everybody, including the students out there and the future people going into the oil and gas industry in this country?
Well, you know, it's we're, like I say, we're going to be around decades and have a lot of bright future ahead of us, and that is our future. And the innovation that they bring is very, very important. And you got to believe it. You got to have a lot of faith, and you have to leave some problems to solve for those guys. You can't do it all. And certainly this global issue is one of those. I mean, we've cleaned up our air in America, but the Chinese, they've added 38 gigatons of dirty air last year. We cleaned up 17, but we can't do it alone here. You know, we can't go to zero effect from CO2 and the rest of the world be polluting like they are. We can't do that. It's got to be global, and all of those solutions is what these guys can help solve. Oil and gas is going to be a big part of that solution. You know, clean burning natural gas is the best thing. Our clean burning Bakken oil has got to be a part of that. The transportation fuels is a very small mix. You know, we're talking 20% of the whole picture. You can't have pollution from the other 80% and win this battle with the climate. So it's got to be all of us. And there's a great deal left to do. It's going to take the innovation from all these young people.
Harold, you always talk about in a downturn, and Continental Resources has done this as good as anyone. I always tell people that Harold will burn the furniture in his office if he's got to save Continental Resources. So you hunker down. We're going to go through this. We're a cyclical industry, just like agriculture. How do you get through these rough periods like this?
Well, you do it with culture. You create a great company culture. We've done that at Continental. Part of it is we don't dump our people in a downturn. We lay anybody off. You know, we figured out how to use everybody. And it's all about opportunity. Find new opportunity. Powder River has new opportunity. Doing all those things. So that's what you do. You keep that skill set that you have. We built this over 50 years. You keep that skill set you built and train people to look for opportunity. It's all about entrepreneurship. So that's the way you get through it. And our people don't worry about, they quit looking over their shoulder. I'm not going to get fired. You know, I'm going to be here. We work pretty lean all the time. We got a hard-working group of people. And my hat's off to you guys. You do a great job. It's tremendous.
Well, my hat's off to you guys, I think, because the last two downturns, 14, 15, and this past year, I don't think Continental Resources laid off one employee because of the downturn. That's worth a round of applause for this gentleman.
Thank you. Thank you.
Harold, just any additional thoughts in terms of how we handle the next several years, and obviously, you know, the U.S. Senate flipped the wrong direction, and the agencies now are you know, regrouping in a direction back to where we were in 2015, 14, 15. So the message to people to get out and get engaged, and how do we turn the script again back to something that we can support energy production in this country? Because I think we're very proud of, I know you're very proud of what we've done in order to bring world energy supplies up from right here in North Dakota.
You bet. North Dakota played a huge role it's been tremendous a role that this state has played in the overall energy picture. And it's you get somebody in that just goes totally against energy and we're going to do away with fossil fuel totally and all that. First of all, it's not going to happen. And two, politics change. People, they do things for political expediency. Joe Biden was a young senator from Delaware that voted in Carter's Fuel Use Act, 1977, mandated 100% use of coal and eliminated the use of natural gas for boiler fuel. And now he's flip-flopped. I mean, it's all about political expediency and what will bring votes to their base. That's what's about. But thank God we're in a great country. We hope to flip the House, and it looks like that's going to happen. And, who knows about the Senate? But, once you divide, House and Senate, you got a good chance of controlling them until somebody else comes into office.
Well, Harold, we were very fortunate to have candidate Donald Trump here in the 2016 conference. We brought him back a year after he became president. He remembered that he literally got the nomination, the Republican nomination, while he was
right
in
here,
this
that
room
day,
at this conference.
That day.
Have you talked to the former president in the last?
No, I'm not on his Rolodex anymore. I don't.
Oh, I bet you are.
So he's not been ringing my phone, but anytime you kind of think something different, he didn't call you. But anyway, he's a good man, did a lot of good things the 4 years he was there. And, so anyway, he's a different individual, good friend, but, I still recall how many tickets they sell for that event, 8,000?
10,000.
Yeah, something like that. And they had a whole bunch out in the hall.
Wrapped up all the way around the building. And
it couldn't get in.
It was something
Yeah, I
else.
remember introduced him and went out and introduced him in a little rah-rah. And he looked around and said, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't either. But it's fun.
Well, tomorrow we're very fortunate to have Secretary of State Mike Pompeo here. Have you met with him a little bit?
Oh, he's a great guy. He's one of us. This guy, the first time I met him, he's in oil field services. He's a member of the Cuyahoga from Kansas. And, he's a great guy, great Secretary of State. How good was that? He understands our business. A great man. I like him. And I know you're looking forward to hearing him. He's going to do a great job. You're going to like it.
You and I could have some fun with a couple of scotches and asking him about Putin and Kim Jong-un and how Trump and all that got along. That would be a lot of fun, Harold. So how many puppies in this litter?
Well, there was 5. One of them didn't survive, but we got 4, and they're precious. So, yeah, I'll show you some pictures and videos.
So I'm kind of Harold's North Dakota dog broker. So if anybody here wants a puppy, you got to deal through me because then I'll deal back to Harold. So
yeah, these are beautiful dogs.
Beautiful dogs. So,
yeah.
Harold, thank you for everything that you've done for North Dakota, for everybody in this room, and always fighting the fight for all of us and being that cheerleader on the hill. And you never give up. And we got a lot of work yet to do. So please, big round of applause for Harold Hamm. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Harold.
Yeah, good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold, and also wanted to extend our thanks to Senator Hoeven for his leadership in Washington. As they all know, and as we all know, the energy industry fuels more than our vehicles. It fuels our economy. It supports tens of thousands of jobs here in North Dakota and millions of jobs across this nation. And it helps fund our priorities and policies at all levels in government. But all these impacts rely on transportation of oil and gas out of our state to other parts of the country, which will be the subject of our next conversation. Kelcy Warren is the CEO of Energy Transfer, LP. He's here today to discuss the value of the Dakota Access Pipeline to North Dakota. Mr. Warren will be hosted by Scott Hennon. Scott is the host of What's on Your Mind, a statewide radio talk show that's heard clear across the state. With that, help me welcome Scott Hennon and Kelcy Warren.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing? Kelcy, you can go right there. How's everybody doing, I said. Who says you can't have fun at a petroleum conference, right? We want to hear you. How is everybody doing? Great. Much better. We want to properly welcome our friend Kelcy Warren back to the great state of North Dakota, and we asked a good friend to do that for us, Monsignor James Shea. So watch the screens here before we start.
It's springtime on the Great Plains as we come together for the Williston Basin Petroleum Conference. To many of you, welcome to Bismarck and welcome to the great state of North Dakota. It's my honor today to introduce to you a friend of mine, Kelcy Warren. When Kelcy began his career, he remembers having one goal: to find places where he could work hard and do better. And that's exactly what he's done at Energy Transfer, one of the largest and most diversified energy infrastructure companies in the country. As an impactful donor to the University of Mary's School of Engineering and Workforce Development Program, I personally know Kelcy as an impressive leader, steadfast friend, and a respected partner in our efforts to prepare servant leaders of moral courage. Originally from White Oak, Texas, Kelcy's early life was marked by simplicity and grit. His father encouraged honesty and kindness in the midst of hard work, and his mother's service to her family was displayed in her compassion and integrity. He spent his early years picking up odd jobs, hauling hay, maintaining telephone lines, and most tellingly, repairing oil field leaks and building pipelines. Kelcy attended the University of Texas at Arlington and earned a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. After graduating, he was hired by Lone Star Gas Company as a pipeline design engineer. In 1996, he co-founded Energy Transfer with 200 miles of natural gas pipeline and 20 employees. With Kelcy at the helm, Energy Transfer has flourished into one of the country's most respected energy partnerships, with Kelcy himself receiving many honors as an admired leader. He's a dedicated philanthropist who supports great causes like the MD Anderson Children's Cancer Hospital, Special Olympics, the Salvation Army, American Heart Association, and many more. One of his most cherished legacies is the Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, named for his young son and widely considered one of the nation's most successful urban parks. In making the gift and naming the park, Kelcy stipulated that Clyde would help clean the park once a month. Here in North Dakota, he has generously supported the Mandan Public Library and the Flasher Public School District Vocational Center. Kelcy's support for the University of Mary and our quickly growing School of Engineering has enabled us to prepare highly skilled and culturally equipped engineers to serve our region. His generosity to our North Dakota Workforce Development Program has provided the opportunity for us to offer comprehensive and relevant education in computer programming, IT, and other critical areas to North Dakota's skilled workers. This also includes Leadership North Dakota, an executive leadership program where rising leaders across the state receive mentorship and networking opportunities. All the while, Kelcy has sought to identify unmet needs and address them. I've seen him with his board, his leadership team, his family, and our students. A treasured partner and friend, Kelcy stands as an exemplar of pioneering spirit, innovation and creativity, joined with compassion and perseverance. Kelcy, it's great to have you back in North Dakota. Please join me in welcoming Kelcy Warren to the Williston Basin Petroleum Conference.
What do you think of that welcome, huh?
Wow. You've heard me say this before. I don't get treated this well in my own home. I mean, these everybody up here is so, everybody understands the energy business. They get it and they respect it, and they're just so kind. I mean, it's just a fun place to come.
That's great. Well, it's good to have you, and I know everybody here appreciates everything as well, so we're looking forward to the chat today. I think we have to start talking a little bit about this Colonial pipeline and what's happened there. It's obviously gripping the news. You're a pipeliner, right? You've just told me that many times. I'm just a pipeliner. We're just trying to put pipe in the ground and help move transportation liquids. And now the Eastern Seaboard, I think, understands that in a whole new way with the consumers and what's happening out there. And I'm guessing you show me with your applause whether you agree with this, but it'd be nice maybe to get a government to stop shutting down pipelines and recognizing their value, right? Right? We need more pipelines, not less, right, Kelcy?
Exactly. Before I do that, can I get everybody to draw attention to these two ties? They match. Anybody else think that's weird?
We should have called each other before today, right? You can tell Ron Ness has got some sway with Kelcy and I. We're both wearing the North Dakota Petroleum tie, so yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so Scott, first of all, we need to deem pipelines as infrastructure. For some reason that's been not included in infrastructure discussion. Not that we need any part of a bill that's being passed, just recognizes as being important. I think Colonial, in a sad way, but ultimately it'll be a good way, has drawn attention to how important pipelines are to this nation. So we'll see what happens. Another thing, Scott, I can't wait to find out what actually has happened, because a lot of this I don't quite understand. For example, everybody out there, I think probably everybody knows, you have your internet, your controllers, and then you have your SCADA system. SCADA system is where you can automated valves you can control and pump stations and what have you.
Which was unaffected in Colonial, right?
Which was unaffected from what I've read. And so I don't quite understand what happened, because if you still have your SCADA, you can still, for the most part, operate, and that's what I don't understand.
Obviously, now everybody's a little more aware. This is, we believe, an attack from Russia. It is a ransomware attack. The administration seems to say this is on you and on other pipeline developers. Hands off, never mind the national security implications here. But from the standpoint of what everybody's now asking themselves, are pipelines safe? Talk from this perspective of Energy Transfer on how you protect against a cyber attack.
Well, there's been several attempts on Dakota Access Pipeline. So to let you know, it's been attempted with us, but it's been caught. The one thing you can't do, and I bet you everybody in the room will appreciate this, we've got all the training you can imagine. People get really tired of the training we send them to, and yet they still make these really dumb mistakes, Picture of Jennifer Aniston and they click on it. Maybe that might be a bad idea. I don't know. Really. So we still have that kind of stuff but because our SCADA is separate, and that is the heartthrob. I mean, in our control rooms, for example, Scott, we take it so seriously. We have bulletproof glass in all of our control rooms. We have redundancy beyond imagine, and for that reason, we just can't. If someone were to get into the SCADA system, then that's going to be a serious issue.
I want to talk about the current regulatory environment that we're in right now. And I don't have to tell you, it's challenging. Even when you follow a process and say, okay, we'd like to do this, and North Dakota Public Service Commission, Army Corps of Engineers, everybody says, here you go, you got your permit, it's still a challenge. And obviously things have not gotten better. Of late they've gotten worse, as you've seen from Keystone XL, and obviously now some of the discussions that are happening as well. Is it fair to say that new pipelines, new proposals are going to be a little more scarce because of this? What do you think it means?
Interstate pipes are, those that cross state lines that fall under federal jurisdiction are going to be in peril. And so, but what it's going to do, what's it going to happen? I mean, anybody that's got the hair I've got, you've been around the loop a few times, and you know that this always corrects itself, and it corrects itself through a Colonial or something like that, where it brings awareness to how important pipelines are. But right now, it's going to be, I don't see another, we built multiple big inch interstate pipelines, billions and billions of dollars worth over the last 10 years. So, And I don't see those kind of projects happening for a while.
And a while meaning years.
Yeah, probably at least an administration, unless there is some kind of event. And I think Colonial has kind of reminded me that event may be more real than not, you know? Yeah.
Let's talk about North Dakota. And obviously, the Dakota Access Pipeline has been a game changer. We're going to talk about that for the industry, for the state tax coffers, for the differential. And that's something that, with this great Bakken sweet crude, has been a challenge for many years, just with the distance to market. I want to get to all that. But in North Dakota, do you see competitors coming in? Do you see more people building pipelines here?
You know, there will be a lot of gathering built. I don't see long-haul pipes. I personally don't see it. I think Dakota Access Pipeline, in my opinion, kind of ended that question mark. I could be wrong. Now, I'm talking about crude. Let's say NGL pipelines, natural gas liquids, or some other pipelines. Sure. I don't think Dakota Access Pipeline. We've got a lot of capacity left. That's a better alternative.
Let's talk a little bit about DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline, and also Energy Transfer, which is obviously, as I mentioned, a very important player here in North Dakota, not only to oil and gas, but overall economic growth of the state. And I could literally drown people in numbers today, but the millions of dollars just in tax revenue. Some might even argue it's the biggest winner is the tax coffers, because there's not obviously the risk economically that you have. But I mean, it's rippled through everything. And the amount of businesses it's helped that are here as well as a result of it. So I want to talk a little bit about the elephant in the room. Did you see the elephant in the room?
No.
Back there's an elephant back there somewhere. And that is the status of the current operation of the pipeline. You don't have to open up a newspaper or turn on a radio or watch a television newscast not to know that the Dakota Access Pipeline is in the news and subject of obviously some legal hearings. So let's talk about the legal process. Let's talk about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and this environmental impact statement that they are doing. What's the latest? What do you want people here to know?
Well, if I may, let me kind of back up and talk about the chronology of events, and I'll be brief. So we announced the Dakota Access Pipeline. We've done everything except Lake Oahe. We get that blocked by the White House, not by the Army Corps of Engineers. It was the lady, Joellen Darcy, that came out and said she thinks that an EIS is probably better. So it just kind of slowed things down. Trump comes in, gets the executive order, we build it. We're flowing oil. Then legal action begins and takes place for a long time, and that legal action is against the Army Corps of Engineers. We are not a defendant in that legal action. So consequently, we're not affected. When I read the order that they're demanding the pipeline be shut down, I said, no, we're not going to shut down the pipeline, and because we're not a defendant in that.
Is that welcome news for everybody here? The pipeline, yeah.
Well, please, if there's any message, and it could be the elephant in the room, we're not shutting down Dakota Access Pipeline. It's not going to happen. Now, So, I think that the bigger question is that the Army Corps of Engineers is a defendant in this case, and they have been just perfect, so professional, doing their jobs, say that they're content with moving forward with the EIS, which we pay for. I don't know if many people know that. The EIS is really our EIS, but and we're heavily involved in that. So I think it's just business as usual until we receive the EIS, and then this stops being used.
Senator Kevin Cramer has been very active with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and talking with them through this whole process as well. And Senator Cramer is a regular guest of mine on the show, and he's received like every assurance you can possibly get from the Corps before and after the change of administrations. And it sounds like you're getting the same assurances on this. They're being professional about this. Obviously, there was some concern when the Biden administration came in. Would they intervene, right? Would they tell the Corps, no matter what you said previously, we're going to change that? So far, that's not happened. Do you anticipate when they ultimately finish the EIS that there's going to be any problems with whatever additional permit would be necessary there? I mean, anything with their process that concerns you?
Scott, I can't see it. As soon as the election was concluded, I gathered my team together and I said, I want everybody to go into a think tank and tell me anywhere an executive order could affect the operation of this pipeline. And we came out with zero. We couldn't find it because executive orders only rule administrative action. They don't rule. Can y'all imagine in this room, think for a second, if we as a government or a nation can start shutting down assets that are operating. I mean, if we start, we got complete chaos. I'm not aware of this happening elsewhere. And so this is a bad precedent. It's not going to happen.
And, on that point, whether you build pipelines or whatever you build, it requires...
Roads.
Roads are a good example, right? You've got to have all kinds of layers of approval, and they're going through, the same terrain that a pipeline does. But any project that requires any kind of, blessing from the federal government to be able to do it, to get a permit, the uncertainty that creates in this environment is incalculable. You're sort of taking those arrows for a whole lot of people, Kelcy, in that regard, because, outside of even oil and gas or even pipelines, what would you say to the average CEO out there about risking capital to build something in a regulatory environment like that?
Well, you just wouldn't do it, Scott. I mean, and that's sad what it would do to this nation. I mean, but you would not do it. I mean, imagine I use a road because it affects more people. Everybody can get their head around a road. So you have a road that was built 20 years ago. It's a major artery to go from here to there. And you did an EA because that's what you were required to do, an environmental assessment. And now it's determined by NEPA or whatever that probably an EIA was required. And so the government says, we're going to shut down that interstate highway until we complete that EIA. That's the same consequential or tangential things that could occur here. And it's just nonsense. It's bad policy, and everybody should be paying attention to this. It shouldn't happen.
If I was to survey folks in the industry that are with us here today at the Williston Basin Petroleum Conference and say, of everything in the way of infrastructure that have had the greatest impact on their business, it would be the capacity and the takeaway that has been the Dakota Access Pipeline, right? To be able to say that, about half the takeaway and more coming later, and we're going to talk about the optimization here as well, but it single-handedly has revitalized the state's oil and gas industry. And that started from the first moment in 2017 where that differential comes down. When the pipeline went into service, the rig count went up, production increased, producer transportation costs went down. If you look back on that, and you had to say, even when it was on the drawing board versus now, what of the greatest impact would you point out? What has most surprised you there?
Well, the pipelines 100% of the time beat rail and truck. That's not condemning those industries. In fact, I have great affection for the railroad industry. They're just the earliest pipelines we ever built in the United States. They transport, they move products for a fee. I respect that, but they can't compete with pipelines. So when I look at this, and then I looked at you've shared data with me on your show before about the amount of products from the farmers that could not move because of it was more profitable for the rail industry to transport oil. Well, that was I hadn't even thought through that. I mean, think about that. Our pipeline stopped that nonsense. It's gone away, and then having for Harold Hamm and others that drilled a well, and there'd be a $20 difference between a Permian barrel and a North Dakota barrel was really crazy. And now that to see that differential come down into at least low single digits is I feel like it's a really good thing.
And from the standpoint of what you're transporting, in the case of Bakken sweet crude, it would be the difference, I guess, in your finest IPA versus Schlitz or something. Hamm's, it's not even around. You like that beer analogy, right? Now, obviously, it's there. And previously, despite that, really, we should be at a point where something as a premium like Bakken crude should really bring a premium on the market. But for the distance, it doesn't, but we've brought that differential down. But talk about the demand of the sweet crude of the Bakken.
Well, it's huge. And most people don't know this. I read a lot of media about Dakota Access Pipeline, and everyone talks about it going from North Dakota to Illinois. It doesn't, guys. It goes from North Dakota to the Gulf of Mexico. And the export appetite for that barrel is pretty significant. The refining appetite for that barrel is very significant. So we don't lack market at all. Even with the virus, when it came along and refineries dialed back, there was still quite an appetite for that barrel. So you've got to. This state has a wonderful product that is wanted by the market, and you've got ways to get it there.
A lot of folks in North Dakota and throughout the industry talk about the value like we just did. It's a big deal. It's made a big difference. I went through the reasons why. Rig count goes up, production increased. Again, the capital investment that needs to follow is easier when you know you've got the takeaway capacity, which is one of the reasons we're addressing the certainty or the lack thereof that is necessary in the market to be able to put that capital in here. But I don't know that the average consumer pays attention to your industry, maybe a little better with Colonial, but I'd hope North Dakotans would, because I've got some numbers here that are pretty amazing when we talk about the benefit of the economics of the state. 4 years, the pipeline has paid more than $27 million in taxes that have gone into the coffers of North Dakota alone. And of course, that's just going to increase because of the optimization that comes, that was announced in 2019. So I want to just pause for a second and wrap your mind around and say, because we have this additional tool to take the sweet Bakken crude to the market, this man in Energy Transfers have written $27 million in taxes alone. Now, never mind a royalty owner and less differential and all of those ripple effects that, folks like Ryan Rauschenberger always does a nice job of quantifying that for us, and you can crunch numbers till you're blue in the face. But in 2 words, I can sum it up, that I know comes from everybody in this industry and also from the people of North Dakota. Thank you. Thank you. Join me in just saying thank you for that one thing. I mean, it's incredible. And this has been a thankless endeavor, as we've talked about. It's been a thankless endeavor from day one, but it is an absolute game changer that we as North Dakotans don't talk enough about, that the industry even tends to take a little bit for granted, but they're better at understanding, boy, without it, what would it mean? Now the country is finding out what it means without transportation infrastructure, but, when this was originally on the drawing board and somebody first said, okay, Bakken crude, let's get it to market, did you ever envision this kind of impact from one project?
No. So two thoughts. One was my knee-jerk thought. They're charging us too much tax, Scott.
Yeah.
I got to talk to somebody.
For all that benefit, yeah. Exactly right. The session just ended, Kelcy, so you're going to have to wait a couple of years for that request, but
what pipeliners do, and it's not a hard business, but what we do is you just look at, is something worth more there than it's worth here? And if so, what does it cost to get it there? And then you just map that out, and if you justify it, you do. When the team brought me the Dakota Access Pipeline, I fell in love with it. I said, now, I think you guys got a tough hill to climb, but they pulled it off, and they should have. Think about it. The second largest oil field in the United States did not have adequate pipeline takeaway capacity. That's sad, and that got fixed. So we're really proud of that.
And through it all, as you said earlier, the people of North Dakota have been, warm to you, and the friendships that have been built from it. And it's been fun to watch you out at the University of Mary. We saw pictures of the students out there in the engineering school and the other things that you've done. He's going to kill me for telling this story, but he was gracious enough to come down and meet with some ranchers down in St. Anthony, North Dakota, and to just kind of understand what they were going through and the challenges of all that. And a couple said, Mr. Warren, can we talk with you? And they're over in the corner. I had no idea what was going on, but all of a sudden, one of the women that was talking to him started crying. I thought, Kelcy, what'd you do? This poor woman's crying. She was crying tears of gratitude because they were trying to build an expansion to the Flasher School, and they asked Kelcy for a donation, and I think at the time they were saying, would you be able to contribute $50,000? And he said, if I do that, how much closer to your goal will you be? Well, you're the first 50,000, so we've got to get another $500,000 or whatever. And he said, let's just do the whole thing. So Kelcy Warren took care of that Flasher School edition right there. One little conversation saved them a little fundraising.
Yeah. And let the record show, I that's the only lady I've ever made cry.
let's talk about the optimization thing a little bit, because the beauty there is you've gone through what you've gone through to get this pipeline in the ground. And I learned so much about optimization to say, wait a minute, you can go to 500,000 to 1 million barrels. I mean, and think about what our needs are and what's coming back right now with all this great technology we're talking about today and all the things that are happening from enhanced oil recovery and just the sheer numbers that have changed in the last 5-6 years about the average well and what it kicks off and how much longer. We're going to have more oil coming. And as this price comes back, which we'll talk about in a moment here, you know, we've got a need for more takeaway capacity. Update us on the optimization project and when you see oil flowing.
We will be finished by the fourth quarter of this year with all the pump stations. So when we talk about optimization, we're just talking about adding horsepower to move more product. And we'll be done. And we can move 750, 800,000 barrels a day pretty easily and go probably up to 1 million pretty easily with a little bit of tweaks. So there's not that volume out there right now to justify that, but it will come back, and we're ready for it.
So all systems go, and fourth quarter this year.
Absolutely.
What do you think of that news, folks? Huh? That is fantastic. And obviously, when you talk about the flow and how much oil will be, you know, coming out of the Bakken in this play, and will go into your pipeline and go other places, it's going to be largely driven by the price of oil. So let's talk a little bit about that. Harold was just out here chatting about that, and he believes what's not to love with the trajectory we're on, especially where it was at the pandemic. Give us your view. What's your opinion on this?
Well, what did Harold say?
They'll have to tell you. He's bully for North Dakota. That's what Harold said. Yeah, he's bully for the price of oil.
Harold is a big customer of ours, so whatever he said, I agree with. No, I mean, it's, you know, guys, we saw this thing that happened last March or whenever. We saw refineries go from 97% utilization. I'm talking about Gulf Coast refineries, which are the ones that matter most to us. 97, 98% utilization down to about 58% utilization. Well, that was difficult. Thank God for the export market, because we still had places to put things. But that has worked its way back up now to be in the 90s again, and still coming back. Now, jet fuel's still lagging. Diesel's lagging some, but jet fuel primarily is the leader of what's lagging. But it's coming back. If you look at the data, it's coming back. So I look at where we were and where we're. I mean, if you look at the Gulf Coast again, the refineries, everything's coming back. So how can crude not follow that, Scott? I'm not knowledgeable about the global market for crude the way a lot of people in this room are much more knowledgeable than I am, but I just look at the fundamentals of demand and supply in the United States that I do understand quite well, and I don't see there's any other answer but that crude is going to slowly, I hope it doesn't dramatically go up. That's bad for everybody, but I hope there is a slow improvement in price over time.
And talk about Energy Transfer's position related to your business with negative oil prices to now. I mean, I'd love to have been down in your beautiful office in Dallas when you were, you know, saying, really? Is that a negative number? I mean, all of us were obviously gripped by that. First of all, your thought when that happened, did you say, temporary, it's a pandemic, there's a lot of fear out there, were you concerned at all?
That was a complete red herring, unless you were a crude trader that was on the wrong side of that for that day. But it was a complete red herring. It was a no, never mind, because it was just everybody needed to settle up at Cushing. They got long and they had to settle up, and so they were dumping barrels. But that purged itself very quickly. Things like that are not good for the market. And in fact, I think that's caused some people to begin to challenge how that price is being set, because that was totally artificial. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to look at that and fix those things. We had a similar thing in the natural gas industry in Texas, where prices are not set by pipeliners. They're set by another entity called ICE, and you follow that price. And we had extreme natural gas prices over about a 5-day period, that there were winners and there were losers. Fortunately, we came out on the right side of that.
So, obviously the rebound you talk about happened fairly quickly, and now we're getting to a point with the demand coming back is looking pretty good. But just, overall Energy Transfer's position through that up and down, how would you assess it?
Oh, good. We felt it. I mean, we're still not back up to our normal say, well, we're past 2019 levels now, but we're not where I would have liked to seen us by now. We'll get there. When refinery utilization comes back up a little bit, Colonial's probably retarded that a tad, but we'll get back up there. So we're close. We're really close. And our NGL business is doing great. My goodness. Our crude oil business, so-so. Spreads in Texas, they're less than $1 to move a barrel from Permian to the Gulf Coast. Less than $1. You know, for a while there we were making $15. You know, now it's less than $1. So natural gas is really good, really, really good. So I feel pretty good about our business long term.
Any other diversification in the future? Any other, besides the petroleum products that you see as, you know, some people are getting into that now and moving things? Hydrogen as an example. Do you see any diversification on that path for Energy Transfer?
I don't, Scott. I have a rule at Energy Transfer. It's got to make economic sense to do it. And
It's got to make a lot of sense.
It doesn't. Hydrogen has what? As somebody in this room knows, probably about a 370 BTU per cubic foot. I can't money that out. I can't figure that out. So, however, I've told our team, we have a whole team that focuses on renewables now, and I've told them, if you can bring me a solar project, a wind project, or any other renewable project that money's out, that makes sense, all things considered, then you know, it's got to compete for dollars the way all pipelines do. If it competes, then we'll do it.
You've announced a new group within Energy Transfer focused on this area.
Yes.
You know, what do you think you're going to find? If I could, say you obviously see some reason to say, hey, let's look at these numbers. Let's pay attention to this. What do you see coming there?
Well, here's what I see, and I'm the only person I've heard say this. The way that you reduce your carbon footprint, excuse me, I'm sorry, is just reduce it, right? So is it easier to reduce it by building a wind turbine in West Texas, or is it easier to reduce it by moving a cargo of propane to a third world country and back out bunker fuel that they're using as fuel? I got your answer. Is propane. And then you take ethane. You know, ethane is the lightest component of the natural gas liquids. Liquefied methane would be the lightest, but ethane is the next. Ethane is now becoming, we're the largest exporter of ethane in the global market, and we're really proud of that, and it's growing. And ethane can likewise be used as a power generation fuel. And there is a bunch of Latin American, Caribbean, other parts of the globe that are still running on the less efficient fuels, the more polluting fuels, and these fuels can replace that. So if you look at reducing your carbon footprint, those are the layups. Those are the easy ones, and that's where Energy Transfer will be focused.
Let's talk a little bit about Enable Midstream out of Oklahoma City. You're in the process of a merger on that. Folks know that that are in the industry. Do they have any assets in North Dakota? And bring us back to the decision to buy Enable. Why buy it?
They do have assets in North Dakota. They have gathering and some central delivery points, some of which is connected to our Dakota Access Pipeline, and some is not. And they have really good mid-continent assets. Enable is a compilation of, for anybody that knows the history of the business, there was an ARCLA Gas, Arkansas Louisiana Gas Company. There was a pipeline called United Gas Pipeline. There was United Texas Transmission. There was all these pipelines that they put together and created a really fine company that's really a great company. And we think it's a great fit for us. It doesn't, a lot of assets that we buy, we have overlap, and we figure out how we can shut down this processing plant and utilize one and take two that are running at 50% and load one. That one's not as much that. This is just extending our footprint into Oklahoma, Arkansas, and capitalizing on the mid-continent barrels, natural gas liquids. Again, we love these assets. We're tied up in the FTC right now, waiting for approval on Hart-Scott-Rodino filing. As soon as we get that, then we'll close.
Is consolidation, obviously, it's not unusual. It happens in the industry, but do you see it maybe being a little more so going forward? What's your view on consolidation?
You must consolidate or you won't make it. You must. And there's a few consolidators, and there's a whole lot more consolidatees, and you just must. Now, what could change that? Private equity screwed this party up bad. They put money into everything, and so you could be a startup and flip it and get really wealthy. Then the music just stopped. And when it did, everybody says, okay, how are we going to continue to move on? Well, the answer is consolidate.
And so, obviously, if you're saying you won't, you anticipate that pace picks up a little bit going
Yes.
forward in consolidation? Yeah. And this year, next year, just expect more of it in the future.
I believe so.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about you for a moment. I think folks, again, follow this in the industry and know that you're now the executive chairman of Energy Transfer, and you have co-CEOs that took the helm from you. I want to talk a little bit about what that means for Energy Transfer, for folks that are watching this, and what it means for Kelcy Warren.
Well, first of all, for those that don't know, when you hear someone's chairman of the board, that's one thing. When you hear that they're executive chairman, that's another deal. That means they're running the business. And so I will run Energy Transfer until I'm not capable of doing it anymore. But instead of having 9 people reporting to me, I have 2. And I just gave my 64th testimony yesterday, 64th in my career, between depositions and actual testimony on stand. I don't want to do another one of those, Scott. And by making myself executive chairman and letting these guys take those bullets or arrows, whatever they might be, I'm out of that. So I'm kind of ready to make a change in my life and spend more time with my family.
Monsignor talked a little bit about this, but we should talk about your family a little bit before we let you go today. I mean, your wife Amy, your son Clyde, obviously going through high school. One thing I loved about getting to know Kelcy Warren, it was very, very, very important to him that no matter what he's doing at Energy Transfer, that family comes first. You know, you get to that level in that position, and that's not always easy. But talk a little bit about your family and about how this at least will free up a little more time for that too, right?
Yeah, well, I have a blended family. So my wife is not the mother of my son. He's 18. Today's his last day of school, and I've never seen, the only one happier than him is me. I really am.
We have a senior at home too, and Kelcy and I compare notes once in a while on the homework, and it's not easy, right? They're testing us.
Yeah, and so, but everybody here, I think, I can't see y'all, but I bet you everybody here has gone through this transition I'm referring to, and that is the transition of leaving high school, going to college, maybe not college, maybe just whatever road you choose, but in his case, going to college, and then transitioning into what's the granddaddy of all achievements? Paying your own bills. And I can't wait. This is so cool. But now let me talk about my wife. She's the neatest lady. She's had some health issues lately, but she's on the winning side of those. And she has 5 grandkids, and they're all under the age of 5. So you can imagine what that deal's like. And so she's very involved in their lives and very active with them, and they're wanting more of my time, so they'll get it.
Well, on the personal side, I mean, that's a real benefit, right? I mean, you got 2 people rather than 9 people reporting to you. It's just more time and more ability to be present for your family and do what you do.
Yeah, and these 2 guys are extremely good. It's Mackie McCree and Tom Long. I've worked with them for many years. Mackie was our chief commercial officer. Tom was our chief financial officer. I have served in a co-CEO role before. It works. It only works if there's good chemistry and good communication, which is kind of part of chemistry. And these guys have it. So I'm very, very pleased with what I'm seeing.
And you now have a little more time to hunt too, right?
Yeah, I hunt a lot. I don't shoot ever.
Anybody else in that category?
I spent more time, I tell the guys, I spend more time in a deer stand than anybody in my position I know of, and I haven't killed a deer in 20 years, but my son does. And so you're talking about a great time to connect with your kid, especially if you take that thing away from him and leave it in the Polaris, and to sit and just in a stand and hear what's going on with them. It's incredible. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the music festival. Folks might not know that Kelcy's a pretty accomplished musician. Was that before you were neighbors with Don Henley or after?
Oh, Don, I don't know. Don moved back about 20 years ago, I think. Yeah.
And but you've had neighbors that are good musicians, many others as well. But just talk about how you got to be an accomplished musician and how important that is to you.
Well, musician, I'm not accomplished. I can play and I can't sing, but I do write. And yeah, so this music festival, it's called the Cherokee Creek Music Festival. And if anybody gets down to Texas, it's actually starting Thursday and this week. It is fantastic. All the money that is anybody pays for a ticket, 100% of it goes to charity. And most charities, that's not the case. Maybe 20% or 15%, depending on operating expense. I cover the operating expense, so it's a wonderful thing. I built a pavilion out in a pasture in northwest of Austin, Texas, near Atlanta, and bands come in and we get them through there. We'll have about 11 bands that'll play, and a lot of fun, kid friendly, pet friendly, whole thing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I know a lot of work for you and Amy and everybody else getting things all ready to go and raise a lot of money every year doing that, and here you are up in North Dakota, so it's all the more reason we certainly appreciate it. Let's just talk a little bit about what comes next and what the future is for Energy Transfer. Before I do that, 25-year anniversary right now for Energy Transfer. So the first time the idea of Energy Transfer came to be, or the idea of your own company and leading it, what did you envision? What were you hoping to accomplish?
I thought we would flip it, and I would make enough money to write songs for a living, which needed to be a lot of money. But then I discovered the MLP vehicle, and my partner was kind of ready to get out, so he got out, and I stayed in. And I discovered that vehicle, and what happens, if anybody is familiar with MLPs or REITs or anything like that, you truly die with these, and because the tax, if you sell, becomes so punitive that you just don't. It's part of your estate planning, and you just never ever sell a unit. So Energy Transfer will never be sold, and that pleases me because it'll be a legacy company that'll go on like ExxonMobil or any of these others. So, and our future, you asked that a minute ago. There is one thing that I'm kind of pushing pretty hard with my team. And all these diversification moves have come kind of from this kind of communication with my team. I want to move us in the chemicals business. And when I say that, if you picture chemistry and you take an ane to an ene, like ethane to ethylene, or propane to polypropylene, then you have a broader market. You have a stabilized product and you have a broader market. And so what Energy Transfer is really doing is looking for ways to expand our market. Because in North Dakota, if these guys are producing 2 million barrels a day, they don't care where it goes. You better just take it, because we need to make sure there's market. Well, you saturate the market over a while in the U.S. We really have. We're a net exporter of hydrocarbons in a normalized situation. So we're really thinking about that, about what is our next expansion of market. And it truly is the plastics business. So I think you'll see Energy Transfer come into that business at some point.
And might some of that be in North Dakota? When people think of the petrochem industry, they think Gulf Coast, right? I mean, it's just that's where it is. Well, you end up with the oil play like the Bakken, and all of a sudden you need takeaway capacity for these millions of barrels a day. So that was thinking a little bit differently, and we got it done there. Obviously, the products here, right? Without necessarily the infrastructure, there's a lot of proposals on the table, a lot of different people thinking about this right now. What's your view of North Dakota's role in the petrochem industry?
It's going to have a huge role, but I don't think you'll see petrochemical plants built here, because you need to be waterborne to truly access the global market for plastics. You truly do. And but to take the raw material from North Dakota down to the Gulf Coast, which we're part of that, and then not refining it, but cracking it, knocking it into different chemicals and selling it is something that you will benefit from.
So when you talk about that being next for Energy Transfer, walk us through that. What is that, obviously this is a space that's important. What would that look like?
Yeah, well, one thing we're really good at Energy Transfer is understanding what we're not good at. And so we're not good at this. So therefore, I want to buy somebody that is good at it. And with that, I want to buy those people that come with the deal. That makes sense?
It does.
There's just a handful of those that even exist, but we're patient, and we're just watching, see what we can do.
So back again to when this started. It was on a napkin. It was on a whiteboard. It's what this is going to be, and you flip it, and you're a songwriter for life. It turned out a little bit different than that because you talked to your tax man, right?
You know, my songs were described by one journalist as being sappy, so I quit doing that.
And now you're running a company. You're executive chairman of Energy Transfer.
Yeah.
But I mean, is it just, like pinch yourself every day when you talk about being?
It's unbelievable. I was telling everybody on the plane coming down, I said, I wake up every morning and I truly feel like pinching myself. This is hard to believe how this has happened. And I'm telling you, it's getting better. I mean, the extremists, I'll call them, that tried to shut down fracking and were unsuccessful. They've now targeted pipelines, and they're successful. They're really successful. If you look at what's happened, a lot of projects are getting canceled. A lot of projects aren't being built. But what did they do tangentially to people like us? You just drove our profits way up. I mean, you're not going to build a lot of these big projects anymore. There'll never be another Dakota Access Pipeline built. There'll never be another Mariner East where we dissect the state of Pennsylvania. That'll never happen again. And so what are those pipes worth that we have in our, we have 110,000 miles or something? What are they worth? A lot.
What's funny is there's been a lot of reporting on back to the Colonial Pipeline situation of people like waiting for gas and not being able to get gas and some reporter, what do you think? And I've not heard one espouse the views of extreme environmentalists that we should have less pipelines or that that energy infrastructure is a bad thing. I mean, getting the consumer involved in this argument, getting them part of this debate, having them recognize what's underneath them that they can't see, is a game changer, isn't it? When something like this happens, to recognize the value of that and the need for that.
It is, and it worries me though, Scott. I mean, look at how some punk kids in some dark room somewhere did this, and look at the impact it's had on our nation. How long before other punk kids, I'm picking on them because I'm picturing these kids with pimples and stuff down there messing with computers, but
in their basements.
In their basements.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes
wearing pajamas.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
But how long before they say, hey, wow, we get some people's attention when we do this. Let's go do some more. That worries me.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, a great disruptor, especially. And that really is a government function, isn't it right? So somebody in Russia got up and said, let me see if I can hack in to the Colonial Pipeline, successfully did it. As you said, a lot of after action answers will come on how in the world did it happen, and you learn from it and everything else. But obviously, a ball's dropped everywhere. But it started with somebody in Russia, if reports are true, that said, I'm going to do that. That really isn't any different than somebody in Afghanistan saying, let's get guys in planes and go into a World Trade Center, is it?
That's exactly right. That's my point. I mean, look, I would have never guessed that this would have had this kind of impact on Colonial. And by the way, I have tremendous respect for them. These are bright people, so I just don't know the facts. I think when I understand all the facts, I'll totally understand what's occurred. But I don't. Clearly, I don't understand them right now. But I'm worried that this is going to be tried a lot more frequently. Again, it's been tried on Dakota Access Pipeline and failed. But I think we may have some more of this coming.
But the big picture here for the consumer is to understand how affordably and how safely what they need is transported from your industry.
Yeah.
And it's an industry under attack right now. There's just no other way to describe it. You pulled Dakota Access Pipeline out of that. It's happening everywhere. Minnesota has been fighting a years-long battle on Line 3, and it's a safer pipeline. It's a better pipeline, and the answer is no. So this really comes down to the consumer, doesn't it? I mean, the consumer has to get engaged in this to say, wait a minute, I don't want more trucks on the road. I want to get my ag products on a train, so I need safe and affordable transportation of these fuels of everything that we need. I mean, that's got to come from the consumer up, doesn't it, Kelcy?
I think it does, and I think it will. I think it's going to take, sadly, it's going to take a little bit of pain, but I think it will. Scott, I'll just share a story with you. Every time I fly into this, I love coming up here. Every time I come in here, I go over Lake Oahe, and it's just a flight pattern that they route us in. And the only way I know where our pipeline is I look for the transmission lines, the electric lines that cross the lake, and that tells me where our pipeline is, and then you can kind of follow it with your eyes. Well, when something is invisible, I feel like it's a little safer than something that's not. And pipelines are certainly that. They're underground. They're thick wall pipe. I mean, Dakota Access Pipeline is built to the highest standards imaginable, especially under the lake. And it's just going to be the safest, best way to move product for a long time out of North Dakota.
Important point, folks. The reason Kelcy's able to spot the path of the Dakota Access Pipeline is because of the power lines. That's called an energy corridor. Members of the media back there, do a little research on an energy corridor, meaning all of the studies, all the permitting were done for that power line long before. All of the things that are concerned about now, we're doing it again.
There's several pipelines there already.
Right, yeah.
And they weren't dredged under the bedrock the way we did. They open cut them back in those days, and which was what we did in the pipeline industry then. So
that's another head scratcher because you're not plowing new ground with that path.
No. We're in the same. We're where the Army Corps told us to go.
So just remember that. Last thing I'll tell you about Kelcy, he's really good at shuffleboard. Really good at shuffleboard, and I've had the pleasure of spending a little time with Kelcy and others, some guys in the neighborhood, and a little shuffleboard. I noticed you don't have one in your office. You've got a couple at home, and it's fun. The guys come over, so if you don't mind, we're going to change that. If you look at the screen, I have made a purchase recently, and it's a Olhausen shuffleboard, and if you see right there in the middle, it has an Energy Transfer 25-year anniversary logo on it.
Oh, wow.
And it's in a truck coming to beautiful Dallas, Texas for you. So
You rock, dude.
on the way. Give a hand for Kelcy Warren, folks.
Thank you.